best wild, edible, and medicinal plants, such as salad greens and shoots, flowers, and mushrooms. She will also discuss some of the native and invasive plants used by birds and cover the basics of how to forage safely and sustainably. I just wanted to mention one thing during the program, if we can try to keep ourselves on mute, that way we minimize any background noise so we can really hear Violet and what she wants to share with us tonight. So with that, without further ado, I pass it over to Violet.
Hi, thanks, Erin. So I'm super excited to be here and talk to you guys about foraging. So it is early spring and spring is right around the corner. So I'm going to talk about some of the easier to identify and common renewable plants, how to use them for food and medicine. So I'm 18 years old and I'm currently I live in Mamaroneck, New York, and I'm currently a freshman, as Erin said, studying natural resources and conservation at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And I've loved nature my entire life. I started co-leading tours with my dad, Wildman Steve Brill, when I was 9 years old. And I started leading some of my own tours when I was 14. But I've been coming on the tours since I was 2 months old. So I began to recognize plants growing up the same way that you would walk into a grocery store and know what celery is and a tomato is and how to identify parsley, because you've been seeing those plants since you were a child. I also know how to identify wood sorrel or common plantain or black birch when you go outside.
Yeah.
So my dad, Wildman Steve Brill, has been leading foraging tours since 1982. And we've been picking some of the same plants in the same spots on his tours for my entire life, and since my dad started leading tours in the 80s. And I started bird watching when I was 10 years old and going on trips with the Bronx River-Sound Shore Audubon. I already had really strong connection and love for nature. So I began birding and I began photographing birds, and I got involved with the Audubon. So when we forage, we're always picking these common and renewable plants, the ones that people refer to as weeds, and they're completely disregarded. They're just the plants that are mowed over a lot of the time. But you pick them, they grow back again, and you pick them and they grow back again. And if the plant that we're picking isn't incredibly invasive or very common, then we're only going to pick a small amount of that, never enough to deplete a plant from where it's growing. And we collect plants. We lead tours for the public, we lead tours for kids, and through engaging with the nature in this safe and sustainable way, then we're teaching people to protect our non-renewable resources. So I want to just emphasize and highlight throughout all of this that you should only pick a plant if you're 100% sure of what you're picking, or you could end up like this, the wild man who ate lily of the valley. Just like when you're bird watching and you have to make sure you have every field mark and every characteristic of a bird right to make sure you're identifying the correct species. It's the same thing with plants. You go over all the identifying characteristics. Are the leaves alternate? Are they opposite? Does this plant have a smell when I crush the leaf? Is it growing very low to the ground, or is it taller? Does it have any poisonous lookalikes? And these are all things to consider. And in general, you just start with the easier to recognize plants. And sooner or later, if you go outside, you'll see plants when you're walking down the street, and you'll be like, oh, that's wood sorrel, or oh, that's lamb's quarters. And it becomes very easy to identify. You also just want to avoid picking in areas of heavy traffic, especially with the root vegetables that pick up traffic very easily. So the plants that we're picking are filled with vitamins and nutrients, and they're free and they're delicious, and they're outside in your backyard. And a lot of people just have no idea what they are or that they're there, especially in the city, because we lead tours in the New York region, Central Park and Prospect Park. People don't realize that there's all this delicious stuff outside growing right beneath their feet, and there is. So I'm going to start off with a pretty invasive plant that most of you have probably heard of or have seen, and that's garlic mustard. So garlic mustard is a biennial, which means it lives for 2 years. The first year, the plant starts off low to the ground, growing small in a basal rosette. So that's a common form that a plant will grow in. It has a root in the ground. As you can, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but there's a root in the ground and the leaves are coming out from that root in a circle, like the petals of a rose, and it'll grow taller. It's very invasive and it absolutely takes over. It's from Europe, and it's a member of the mustard family. So its leaves are edible raw, although they are a little bitter. During the cold weather, though, they tend to be less bitter. So you can eat the leaves and you can eat the root, and the root tastes like horseradish, which is why my dad won't eat it even because he's a vegan. So this is great in pesto, in bland dishes, and it is a member of the mustard family. So all mustards have flowers with 4 petals in the shape of an X or a cross. That's typical of the mustard family. Sometimes you'll see 2 plants and you'll think because the leaves look so similar that they're related, but that's not necessarily the case. If the flowers of the plant look almost identical, then that's what's going to reveal that they're related. And Linnaeus discovered that the reproductive structures of the plant, so the flowers and often the seed pods, but not all the time, will look alike if different plants are related. So in early spring right now, we are getting garlic mustard, basal rosettes, and also just coming up as these little sprouts. So I'm not sure how big my screen is here, but I actually do have a few samples. So I actually have a basal rosette of garlic mustard that I got just down the street at Sheldrake at a local park. And on the picture, and as you can see, if my screen is big enough, it has these heart-shaped leaves with teeth or scalloped edges. And if you crush it and smell it, it tastes like garlic, and hopefully it smells like garlic. And hopefully on an update of Zoom, the smell will go through the computer and you'll be able to smell it too. So these microgreens, these little sprouts are edible and they are delicious in hummus, in sandwiches. They're amazing. Later in the year, the plant will grow much taller in its second year because remember it is a biennial. So it'll grow a stem and it'll have these needle-shaped seed pods, as you see in my dad's pen and ink drawing on the right. And if you strip those seed pods off of the stem, you'll end up with these little black mustard seeds. And unlike the commercial mustard seeds, you don't need to grind them because they're chewy. And again, it's invasive, so you'll see this everywhere. And you can put those on avocado toast and guacamole on top of pasta. Very common, great use for garlic mustards. So this plant is actually available almost year round. If there's not snow on the ground, you'll probably still find it. It is a cold tolerant plant, so you'll find it into the fall and early spring and throughout the growing season. So next I'm going to talk about the ramp. So the ramp is incredibly delicious, and you've probably heard of this one. It's especially good in April. So you collect this a few weeks into April, early April into mid-April. It varies, but it's related to onions and garlic. It has leaves that smell like onions and garlic, and it has these bulbs that are also delicious. The leaves are always in twos. There's 1 bulb in the ground and then 2 leaves come out from there. And if you crush it and smell it, it smells like garlic. A lot of people forget to smell the plant and only look at the identifying characteristic, but the smell can be a clear giveaway of if you have the right plant or not. So people will pickle the bulbs, they'll put the leaves in pesto, anything that you normally use scallions or chives for, you can substitute for the ramp. And even when the leaves aren't in season anymore into the summer and fall, in the painting, you see that there are the skeleton of the plant with the seeds on top. If you know where to look, if you know where the leaves were growing in April, and you see that these seed pods are coming up, then you can know, oh, this is where I should dig in case there's a bulb underneath that you can harvest, even when the leaves are long gone. But you never want to deplete the bulbs, so you always want to make sure that you're leaving enough of the leaves and the seeds. So another plant similar to this one, another allium is field garlic. So field garlic looks kind of like grass, except grass has flat leaves and field garlic has round blades. So I do have some here. It smells like onions and garlic, round blades, and it'll have these bulbs underneath that you see in the picture. And these are also the bulbs. And the bulbs, they are also edible. You have to take off, there's an outer layer of dirt that you can actually just peel right off of the bulb, and then it'll be edible. So again, this is a great substitute for scallions and chives, and it has round leaves, not flat leaves, and it comes up twice during the year. So you'll get it now in the early spring, and it'll actually have a second growth in the fall that you can also harvest from. But one thing that I do want to warn you about is that field garlic does have a poisonous lookalike. There's me with the field garlic on the right. They say that field garlic stops kids from getting worms, but as you can see, that's far from the truth, as here am I with the field garlic in one hand and the worm in the other hand. So there is a poisonous lookalike called Star of Bethlehem. Star of Bethlehem has a flat leaf with a white stripe down the center of the leaf. It has no smell at all. And the bulbs are often like a more yellow color than the white that you'll get on the field garlic bulb. So you always want to avoid this plant. Star of Bethlehem actually caused the only death that we've ever had on one of our tours. We were picking the plants. We told everyone, this is what field garlic looks like. It has a smell, strong odor, round leaves, not flat blades, and they were growing near each other. So 5 minutes later, a woman was putting the poisonous plant in her bag. And we stopped her before she could eat any, but the poor woman still succumbed. She died of embarrassment. So that's the field garlic. When you do eat field garlic, though, you do get a superpower. But let me warn you, it doesn't turn you into a superhero. It turns you into a supervillain. The power you get from eating field garlic is called death breath. And your breath will smell so bad that if you blow in your friend's face after eating it, if it doesn't kill them, it'll make them wish they were dead. So I do have a cure for the death breath, and that would be black birch. So black birch has oil of wintergreen, and so it has a really delicious flavor, like a winter fresh gum. So you will not have to worry about death breath anymore. It has leaves that are alternate. So alternate leaves, as you see in the top picture, mean they're like a ladder, kind of one after the other, not directly across from each other, but one after the other, like rungs on a ladder. The leaf also has little teeth on the edges, and it's too tough to eat for people. You can only eat the leaf of black birch if you're a goat, and we know this from experience. One time, my dad and I were leading a tour in Bethlehem, Connecticut, for a farm, and the farm had goats, and they called us up and they wanted us to lead a tour because they said their goats were dying, and we wanted to help them. The vet thought that the goat might have ate a poisonous plant. So we were going to the farm and we led a whole tour trying to figure out what was killing the goats. After a while, we couldn't figure out what was killing the goats. One plant was fine to eat. One plant was fine for goats. People wouldn't eat it. Another plant just tasted bad. And the last plant that we found on the tour was common elderberry. And elderberry leaves actually have cyanide in them. And so that was what was killing the goats. But during this tour, while my dad was trying to figure out what was killing the goats, I was leading my own tour for the goats, looking for black birch, because every black birch tree we found, the goats would just eat all the leaves and strip off the leaves off of the twigs. And when all the leaves were gone from the lower branches, the goats would climb up the tree, 2 hoofs on me, 1 hoof on the fence, 1 hoof on the tree, trying to get the higher black birch leaves. So you can't eat the leaves unless you're a goat. But this is an incredible plant. The twigs actually have oil of wintergreen in them, otherwise known as methyl salicylate, which is a low-dose aspirin. It's the cambium, the layer under the bark, that has the oil of wintergreen. So if you have a headache or if you have a stomach ache, you can just chew on the twigs. I actually have some of the twigs here. And if you want to make tea with them, it also makes an amazing tea. You just boil a pot of water and let the twigs steep for 20 minutes, and it makes an amazing pot of tea. So here are my black birch twigs. They work very well dried, so we just have them in a jar. What's very interesting actually about the black birch is that the wintergreen smell, the oil of wintergreen in the bark, we know, in the cambium really, we know why that plant has the oil of wintergreen, how that helps the plant itself to survive. For a lot of these plants, like if you've heard of common plantain, which helps cure mosquito bites, we don't know why the plant has the substances that it does, how that helps the plant to survive. But for black birch, we do. Say there's an insect that's an herbivore that comes along and it starts eating the tree and damaging the tree. Even when you just break a twig in half, you can smell the oil of wintergreen, and if the tree is being damaged, the oil of wintergreen will go out into the air. Predatory insects may smell the oil of wintergreen and will fly upwind to the tree and eat the herbivorous insects that are damaging the tree. So it actually serves as a communication device between predatory insect and tree. Instead of just, if you don't want to chew on the twigs or make a tea with them, people also make birch beer, which you can just do by chilling the tea and adding chilled water and a sweetener, and that'll make you birch beer. This tree has smooth gray bark with horizontal lines, which actually let oxygen into the tree. Other trees like cherry, black cherry have this too, but if you break the twigs and smell them, black cherry will smell like a bitter almond scent and not the wintergreen. So you know you have the wrong one. The bottom photo is my dad's invention of stick pudding flavored with the black birch twigs. It's a tapioca pudding with lemon rind, vanilla bean, I think soy milk and tapioca pearls, probably other ingredients too. And you just strain out the twigs at the end and you have stick pudding. So here's me chewing on the black birch twigs because I said this plant is great medicinally. It has a low-dose aspirin, so I was actually using this for teething. At this time of year, before the leaves appear, you'll see this bud. And the buds, again, are alternate as the leaves are alternate, and so are the cones. Evergreens aren't the only ones that have cones. So this is one that you can identify and use at all times of year, and it's definitely one of my favorites. So next I have common spice bush. Common spice bush, Lindera benzoin, is actually a shrub. The branches actually come straight out of the ground. It has no trunk, so you also know it's not a car or an elephant. And it has smooth gray bark with little white dots on it. If anyone wants to unmute and try to guess what food you'd buy at a street vendor that has little white dots on it that look like the bark, you can guess. Say you're in the city. What food are you going to come across that has little white dots on it?
I have no idea. Pretzels.
Pretzels, yeah. So pretzels, the bark does look like a pretzel, which is one way that you can remember and identify it when you're outside, even in the winter. So it has leaves of different sizes, and this one, similar to the black birch, you can use to make tea. It makes an amazing tea, which kind of tastes like allspice. And the tea was used for fever before people thought that fever was, before they knew that fever was a symptom. Before that, they thought that fever was its own disease or sickness. Now we know it can be a symptom of any number of diseases or illnesses. But the tea is still delicious. It's actually dioecious, which means that there are separate male and female bushes. Usually plants have the male and female parts on the same plant, but this one doesn't. And the female bush shrub has the berries. So there are these little red berries that you get late summer and fall. And you don't eat them just like you'd eat a raspberry. It would be like biting into a clove of garlic or another seasoning, because they're very strong and you use them as a savory ingredient. So we actually make spiceberry butter sauce. We add them into peanut butter and we bake them into breads and cookies, and they're amazing. So if you crush the leaves and smell them, they have this amazing kind of undescribable smell, but close to allspice. And the leaves have smooth edges, they're teardrop shaped, and again, they're all different sizes. So even when all the leaves are mature, there'll be some really tiny ones and some much larger ones. And just be careful when you're picking from the spice bush not to bump into any of the Spice Girls. So next I'm going to talk about sassafras. So sassafras is also a tree, and we collect it when it's a sapling. It has 3 types of leaves: an oval-shaped leaf, a midden-shaped leaf, and a glove-shaped leaf, or 3-fingered glove, or a T-Rex foot-shaped leaf, we like to say. The leaves, when they're very young and they're still tender, you can actually just eat those raw. You'll see that they have a very mucilaginous taste because they can be used as a thickener. People often grind them into filet powder and use them to make gumbo. You can recognize the shrub or you can recognize the tree when it's a sapling because it has very green bark with dots on it. Green will fade away when it gets larger, and then that's the tree with the mature tree's bark. And it's the cambium on the root that has most of the flavor. So you make tea with this, kind of like the spice bush, but you simmer this one. So you boil a pot of water and let the root simmer for 20 minutes. And the root has this amazing smell, and we have it dried, and it still smells. I wish you could all smell the root. It is delicious. Smells delicious. And if you want to chill the tea, and again, add chilled sparkling water and a sweetener to it, then you'll get root beer. So this one is available year round. And when we're picking the saplings, you pick them if they're in full sunlight, you don't want to pick them because this tree needs full sunlight to grow. But often when we find them on our tours, they're completely shaded out, and it needs full sunlight, and the saplings will die when they're shaded out. We always see saplings where the entire top row of the sapling, the leaves, there's no leaves and it's just dead. So it does need full sunlight to grow. So picking the saplings doesn't do any harm. The tea is delicious, but the FDA actually removed it from the markets. They said it is illegal to sell sassafras or promote drinking the tea. And that was because the FDA found out, to their horror, that if you drink 200 cups of sassafras tea a day made from artificial concentrate for 2 years and you happen to be a rat, then you'll have a higher chance of developing liver cancer. And that's because rats actually convert the active ingredient in sassafras, saffrol, into a carcinogen, but humans do not. And in all of recorded history, no human being has gotten sick from drinking sassafras tea. So sassafras was off the market for a while. Here's sassafras. Well, here's some people who were really excited about the sassafras root that they pulled out of the ground. It is a very strong root. So if you make tea from a sassafras root, you can actually reuse the root over and over again for tea for multiple times. And it's very strong, so a little bit goes a long way. With the root that they're holding up in the photo, you could probably make like at least a gallon of tea from that one root. It really is amazing. On the left picture, this is a sassafras that we found at Saxon Woods in White Plains in Westchester. And it is actually has a mutation in it that's causing the leaves to have more lobes than normal. This is the only time we've ever seen this. I think this was like, it must have been like 7 or 8 years ago we found this one, but it has a leaf with 5 lobes on it. A few of the leaves there have 5 lobes on it, but we've never seen that again besides that one time. Here's the next plant that I have, and I'm sure you've all been itching to learn about this one. Poison ivy. So poison ivy has 3 leaves, let it be, but it also has a stem. So we say if you hold out your arms, then you have 1 leaf, 2 leaf, 3 leaf, and your neck is the stem. It can change a lot throughout the year. So it can be a woody shrub. It can be a very hairy vine growing up a tree. It can even be a herbaceous plant. So it changes a lot throughout the year, and it is extremely common. So it's important you know what it looks like at different times of year. Here it is 3 leaves. In the springtime, it's very, very shiny. And the leaves can have teeth on the edges, like a few serrations, but it can also be smooth on the edges. So that also makes it a little bit tricky to identify. And then the bottom photo, it has berries. Birds love to eat the berries. They're ivory white, small, spherical, and clustered. And one thing about poison ivy is that any part of the plant at any time of year can give you the rash. And that's because there's an oil in it called urushiol. And if you happen to be allergic to it, you'll get the rash. Not everyone gets the rash. We've known people who haven't actually gotten the rash until their like 30s or even their 60s. And they've been handling poison ivy their entire life. So there's always a chance that you can still get the rash. And the oil actually isn't potentially harmful to people. It's just that your body thinks it's something harmful and it's on your skin and your body will attack it, but it'll actually kill its own skin cells, which leaves you with the rash. And it is related to cashews and mangoes, and urushiol found in poison ivy is also found in cashews and mangoes, very trace amounts. And cashews aren't a nut, cashews are a fruit. So we've had people come on our tours and say, oh yeah, I'm really severely allergic to poison ivy, and I've also gotten rashes from eating cashews and mangoes. And like 1 in 1,000 people, just by standing near poison ivy on a windy day, can actually get it without even physically touching the plant. And you would know if you're this person. You would be probably extremely sensitive to cashews and mangoes. But the oil, the molecules of the oil will actually get picked up in the wind. So here's the hairy vine known as squirrel's tail. I'm still trying to figure out why it's called that. It has beautiful yellow, red, orange leaves in the fall. And because of its beautiful color, people have actually transplanted it to other countries, like I think Germany and Australia, just for the fall foliage. And because of this red color, it grows all over Fire Island. That's why it's called Fire Island, is because of the amount of poison ivy growing on it. So best thing to do is just stay away. It does have an oil again, so the oil is like car grease. You can't really get it off with soap and water. So what people do is they'll actually take a detergent and try to like rub it on their skin and actually physically remove the oil to prevent the rash. But I have a better solution, and that's jewelweed. So if you ever have a skin irritation, whether it be you touched poison ivy, or you have a bee sting or a wasp sting or a rash or a burn, jewelweed is an amazing native plant that is great for skin irritations. It's called jewelweed because there's wax on the leaves which repel the water. So as you can see in the first picture, it'll actually, water droplets will form into the shape of jewels on the plant. If you have a dumb friend, you could actually sell them the jewels. And when it's first coming up, which it should be soon, relatively soon, these, on the bottom picture, there are little sprouts coming up, 2 leaves directly across from each other. The larger leaves, as you can see, have like scalloped edges, and the stem is just really succulent overall. It has a very thick stem that's just filled with water, and that's because this plant always grows in wet areas. So it is the juice from the stem that will help you with skin irritations. Another name for this is touch-me-not, and that's because it'll have little seeds in the summer, where if you touch the seed pod, they pop, and you have to be fast enough to catch the seeds before they pop. And in the bottom picture, you can see we caught the seeds, and those little green seeds taste like walnuts, and they're delicious. Although not very substantial, you can't collect them in super great quantity, but they are still good, and they're fun to play with if kids are on the tour. It's actually the spring, which you can see there's a spring inside of the seed pod that will make it pop like that. So one thing that we do with jewelweed is you get a bunch of the jewelweed stems and you stuff them into a jar, and you fill the jar to the very top with witch hazel. And you'll shake the jar every morning and every night for about 2 weeks, making sure there are no air bubbles. If there are air bubbles, you can unscrew the jar and fill in more witch hazel. And after 2 weeks, you'll strain out the jewelweed stems, and you can fill that the liquid that you still have remaining into little spray bottles. And so if you're out walking, you think you touched poison ivy, you can spray that on your hand, or if you actually have jewelweed, you rub the juice from the jewelweed stem on your skin. And if you rub it on your skin before you get the rash from poison ivy, you won't get the rash, and it completely prevents it. So this is also handy, like if you get a mosquito bite, any skin irritation. So a lot of people don't really associate mushrooms with being an early spring wild edible, but tree ears are also known as wood ears. So these were actually from my tour just last weekend at Sheldrake. We found a lot of tree ears. They're a type of jelly mushroom, and they do really feel like jelly. They're really easy to identify. There's nothing really up right now that looks like them. They have like brown on the top, white on the underside, and they grow on wood. Sometimes not even just logs, but you'll see them just growing on sticks, in dead leaves, under oak trees. You can often find them. And these are great. You can simmer them for 15 to 20 minutes. They're amazing in soups. We actually bake them with coatings. My dad makes a sweet chocolate coating, and we bake them, and he says that they come out, which they do, they come out like gummy bears almost. You can also put them in stir fry, and they reproduce through spores, which all mushrooms do. So at Sheldrake, I actually found, these are from the other day, and I actually have some of them now, but they were left in the sun. So it was really nice out today. So they got dried up, but you could still get these and rehydrate them in a bowl of water, and they will still be perfectly fine to use. So they would work dried too. Another common wild edible is chickweed. So we call it, it's called chickweed, but we like to call it parakeet weed, and that's because I have a parakeet and his name is Wisteria, and he loves chickweed. So we'll always pick some for him when we're outside, and he loves it. It tastes just like corn on the cob, so it goes great with our jokes. I have some in here somewhere. Yeah, so chickweed will have opposite leaves, and you'll notice on this one, the leaves are directly attached to the stem. There are variations of chickweed there where there are actual leaf stalks, where there's a separate stem connecting the leaf to the main stalk. And that will be how you know it's common chickweed. The one where its leaves are directly attached to the stalks is star chickweed. So it also has a little row of hair on the stem, and I'm sure you cannot see that, but if you looked very closely or with the like a loop or a magnifying glass, you'd see a little row of hair. And this one is filled with vitamins and nutrients. It is incredibly delicious, and you'll often find it now growing by walls. And you see here, it's growing right on a stone away from its natural enemy, of course, the lawnmower. So the sun will hit the stone or the wall and absorb the heat. And so it is a cold weather plant. You're not going to find chickweed growing in the middle of the summer. We find it in the spring, and it comes up again in the fall. So it will take advantage of those warm surfaces. It'll grow like a mat along the ground, or again, up the side of a wall. And we put this in dips. We make cream of chickweed soup and cream sauces out of chickweed. It's amazing. One thing about it is that And chickens do love it, as you can see in the picture. So if you're ever walking outside, don't be afraid to try chickweed. Actually, you should be afraid to try chickweed, because if you're afraid, then you're chicken. But if you're chicken, you'll love it. So chickweed, because it's filled with vitamins and nutrients, and it has that really high like content of them. People in the 1800s actually gave chickweed to convalescents, people recovering from diseases like smallpox or typhoid. Their immune systems were really weak, and the vitamins and nutrients in chickweed would just replenish their systems. So this was given to convalescents. That's what the herbalists did. On the other hand, there was a really common medical practice that didn't use wild herbs to treat people if they were sick. Does anyone know a very common and now almost obsolete kind of practices that they used to treat people with in the 1800s? Say George Washington. George Washington gets a cold. What do you think they're going to do for George Washington?
Leeches.
Yes, leeches. They bled him. This actually happened. George Washington got a cold, so they bled him. But do you think that made the cold any better? No. So what did they do? They bled him again. And George Washington surprisingly got even more sick. So, but George Washington is a very important person. You can't let George Washington die. So what did they do? They bled him a third time, and then he actually did die, but at least his cold was gone. So that's chickweed. Next I have up is hairy bittercress. So hairy bittercress is also very common, and it's another member of the mustard family. So again, like the garlic mustard, which had 4 petals in the shape of a cross, because it's in the cruciferous family, hairy bittercress is in the same family, and it also has little flowers, although much smaller than the garlic mustard flowers, with 4 petals in the shape of an X or a cross. And I do have some somewhere. Here it is. So here's the hairy bittercress, and here are the flowers. So hairy bittercress has a compound leaf. So that means that here it is. This is one leaf divided into little segments, little leaflets. And the leaflets are alternate from each other. So there's one after another. They're not directly across from each other. It's kind of hard to see. But this one also has a very spicy taste. So you can really, the opportunities that you can use hairy bittercress for are basically endless. You can put it into salads. You can roast it. My dad makes an herb butter that you can roast it with. You can saute it. In whatever really needs a kick, you can just add some of the hairy bittercress too. The leaves are edible, as well as the flowers and the little seed pods. It'll have small little needle-shaped seed pods, again, similar to the garlic mustard, because plants that are related have similar reproductive structures. So with this plant, it's mainly the flowers. Seed pods sometimes look similar. There are also mustards that have seed pods that are round and flat, so that's not as reliable. But the flowers, if they look similar, if they look the same, then those 2 plants are definitely going to be related. And this plant also grows in a basal rosette. So again, like the garlic mustard, there's a root in the ground, and the leaves come out from that root in a circle, easier to see on the picture, like the petals of a rose are in a circle. So it's called a basal rosette. So now I have the ginkgo. So ginkgo biloba. If you're ever walking down the street and you smell this really stinky plant, really stinky fruit, it's probably the ginkgo. Like spicebush, the ginkgo has separate male and female trees, and the female tree produces these fruits and these nuts. It's the most ancient tree on Earth. Fossils were actually found of the leaf 270 million years ago. As you can see in the picture, the leaf, there are kind of lines running through it. And those are actually like feel like grooves when you hold the leaf in your hand. And these grooves kind of resemble what looks like pine needles, if pine needles were sewn together. So the ginkgo is actually a really, despite what I said about the leaves not being reliable to tell if two plants are related or not, the ginkgo is actually a really distant relative of the pine tree. Before the needles became separated, they were knit together like you see in the leaf. So the bottom picture shows the really smelly fruit, and the fruit is poisonous. You can handle it as long as you don't handle it for like hours on end. If you are handling it for hours on end, I'd suggest wearing work gloves, because the ginkgo actually also has trace amounts of urushiol, which poison ivy has in it, in the fruit. So what you want to do is you take the fruit, you take the nut out of the fruit and you wash it off, and you roast it in the oven at 300 degrees for 25 to 35 minutes, stirring occasionally. And then you can just crack the shell open just like you'd crack open a pistachio nut, and you can eat the nut inside. And the bottom right, those are actually the flowers. So here's a ginkgo tree, and here are the nuts, what they look like after we've cooked them, and they've been coated with an herb butter. So the tree on the left, you can see there are lots of, the branches actually look like there are little like bullets coming out from the sides. They almost look like bullets on the twigs, the buds, and that's how you can recognize the tree from a distance. The nuts and the fruit will be falling down. They fall down in autumn, in the fall, and they'll actually overwinter. And the snow will actually preserve them sometimes. So if you go out looking for them at this time of year, you will find a large handful of them. Some might be rotten, but I know we do tours in Central Park in early March, and we still get plenty of ginkgos on those tours. So looking ahead into the summer months, we're gonna get June berries, we're gonna get black raspberries and blackberries, and June berries are incredibly delicious. Obviously they ripen in late May and June. They have a little crown on the top of them like blueberries do. And you can eat so many of these that it becomes really dangerous, because if you eat too many, you can die of happiness. They taste so good. And blackberries are also one of my favorites. They are very they have lots of thorns on them, so you have to avoid thorns when you're picking, but they're delicious. But unfortunately, blackberries have become less and less common over the years. Birds also love all of these fruits, and they love the June berries. When we're on our tour, when I'm doing a tour in Forest Park in Queens in June, we're picking the berries right along with the birds. But blackberries have become very rare recently. They're actually in decline, but that's no surprise because there's so much competition with the iPhone. So we don't really find that many blackberries anymore. But so this is just a very, very small sampling of what is actually around right now and what you can actually pick and go out and collect. If you go on enough foraging tours and you start seeing this stuff, you're going to start seeing it everywhere you go. You're walking outside and you're going to be recognizing it right when you're walking down the street. So I want to say thank you to everybody and happy foraging, and pick your greens, especially because tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day.
Violet, that was incredible. And my first question is, are you considering doing comedy? Because all those jokes were, I was literally laughing out loud like multiple times. I love
Thank you. I mean, I do have to apologize though. Some of the jokes are mine, some of them I stole from my dad, but I mean, I am an environmentalist, so I do have to recycle our jokes.
Like, look at this. I can't. I loved it. When he was at the Spice Girls with the spice bush, I mean, all of them. I just that really cracked me up. So that was my question. I do
Yeah,
have
and
another
there's
question.
more. There's even
before-
more plants. I've barely scratched the surface, so I
Oh, I
will
can't
take.
wait to hear more.
I will take any. I will take any questions. If anyone has any questions about foraging in general or the tours.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we sign up for a tour?
Okay, so my dad's website, which I will put in the chat now. You can sign up for the
Okay.
tours on there. There is a link to the tour calendar, and we do tours in the city, we do tours in Westchester, and sometimes we got into Connecticut. So yeah.
I did do it with your dad years ago. So
Great.
good experience, really good experience.
I have a question. For the
Sure.
sassafras, did the FDA now allow to sell it? Or are
Is my dad on here? Does he know? Do they? I don't think so. I don't think they allow to sell the sassafras tea. They do sell fillet powder, which is actually made from the ground sassafras leaves, but I guess the FDA does
No,
not
it's
realize.
it's still off the market.
The
and-
FDA doesn't realize that the fillet powder is made from sassafras.
Yeah, also they really don't like it because it's toxic to rats, and there's a lot of rats in the FDA.
We know where the humor comes from.
Yes.
Violet, I was in a backyard when I had a house in the Bronx, and there were little tiny red berries in a plant, and I couldn't tell you what they look like now, but they were very tiny little red things. And I said, "Oh, I'll taste one." Popped it into my mouth, and I had this horrible experience. It just blew up my mouth. I was like gagging and choking, and I didn't know what it was, but it was just frightening. So can you think of anything that I would have picked in a backyard that would have been almost toxic tasting?
I mean, my first thought of a red berry would be the Japanese yew berry, which is red, but it comes from a bush, but it has a little seed inside. And if you swallow that seed, I mean, there's a lot of red berries, so it could really be anything. But if you swallow that seed, it'll actually like stop your heart and kill you. So
Still here.
yeah, my dad, Wildman. Do you know what it could have been?
I
It
don't
was a
know,
small plant.
since I never taste poisonous berries, I have no idea what they taste like. We'd
Oh.
actually have to see a sample of
Yeah, well, too
the
late.
shrub and the leaves, and then we can tell you
what
what
it
it
was.
is. But as Violet said at the beginning, don't ever eat anything until you've identified it first, or at least tried it on the boss.
Oh, absolutely. We'll do that again.
Yeah, that's terrifying though. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
so I always
absolutely.
check 100% sure of what I'm picking. Also, Emily in the chat said, is there a particular Westchester or a New York City tour that's especially exciting? And what I'm gonna say is that any tour that we lead, we're always finding different plants and picking different things. In Central Park and Prospect Park, there's so many plants in the city parks, which people don't expect because they expect, oh, there's a lot of plants that are going to be like in the country. But in the city parks, there are no, a 4-letter word, actually, deer. There are no deer in the city parks, so they're not picking everything. In Westchester, all the deer downloaded my dad's app and bought his books. That's another thing. My dad has an app, Wild, what's it called? It's not called Wild, but it's Foraging.
Foraging with a Wild Man.
Changed the name. And he has 5 books, including Foraging New York, which really covers the whole region. Each with a different emphasis, a cookbook, Foraging with Kids, that'll just teach you about all the common wild edibles, all the stuff that I went over, plus more in detail. So yeah, Westchester, yeah, Crestwood in April is really amazing. I don't think I'm going to be around for that one. I'm going to be back in school, but we get ramps on that tour. We get ostrich fern fiddleheads. We get plants that we don't get anywhere else. So.
Yeah, that was going to be
Violet.
my question. So there is a cookbook because some of those recipes sounded so good. Like I want to just like go foraging right now and just like they sounded amazing.
Yeah, my dad actually has a really bad case of CCD, compulsive cooking disorder. So he's always in the kitchen coming up with new stuff. You should
Oh,
see
geez.
the cabinets filled with dried plants and like all
And
kinds
is
of
there a joke book too? Do you guys have a joke book as well?
People told us to do this. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. People keep telling us to do it, so I'm gonna do it.
You have
Bernie has a question.
Yeah, you didn't cover this plant today, but that the native ginger, I forget the Latin name on it, is that actually edible or no?
Yes, yeah, wild ginger, which we actually get in Crestwood and we've seen growing in Prospect Park. We get that one, has 2 leaves coming out from the root, heart-shaped leaves, and that one is edible. You should definitely cook it though. You should cook the root. It's not recommended to eat raw.
Mm.
So that is edible.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you for everyone.
Oh, Alice has her hand up.
Yeah. Hi. Hi.
I was supposed to
We're
be
former neighbors.
That's all
I
right.
know.
Catch you at the end while I'm doing other work.
So my question, are there rules or guidelines that will
Alice, your
Wouldn't-
microphone is kind of cutting out. I can't really hear you. That well, so I'm gonna put it in the chat.
okay.
So yeah, as I was saying, there's all different plants at all different times of year. The berries in the summer, and we get black walnuts and hickory nuts in October. Sometimes there are really great years for mushrooms. So 2 years ago, after all the flooding and the rain, we had maitake mushrooms, hen of the woods, on almost every tour in the fall. We had honey mushrooms and chanterelles. So we go over the mushrooms too if we happen to find any on the tours, but we don't do separate mushroom walks.
Are there fiddlehead ferns around the city parks?
Yeah, I don't think we've ever found any in the city. My mom has found them in Hunt Woods, and we find them in Crestwood, but I've never seen them in the city parks. Alice said, what are your guidelines for places you would not forage? For instance, wildlife preserves where you might be competing with wildlife. So in terms of like safety, don't forage near heavy traffic, but I mean, we always try to respect like rules if certain parks like have rules about like not picking things, but what we're picking are common and renewable, and a lot of them are invasive. And we're never going to be picking enough to deplete a plant from where it's growing. So we really wouldn't see it as like doing any potential like harm in terms of like competing with the wildlife, because what we pick is taking over. It's growing everywhere. You pick it and it comes back. And we've been picking the same plants in the same spots for years. But we do try to respect like rules if people say don't pick in like these places. But we've never really had an issue with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Violet. Great presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be able to do this.
This was excellent. Thank you so much, Violet.
You're welcome. And again, we just scratched the surface. There's so many more plants that I could go into and talk about. So if you ever want to hear more, I'm willing to share.
Yeah, can't wait to go on one of those foraging tours. It looks awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm already ready to get this cookbook. I have it like queued up after this.
Okay.
Get in the cookbook.
Awesome. Bernie, did you have another question as your hand just raised from?
just raised my hand. Yeah, hello? Am I
Hi.
on?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can hear you.
Yeah, is there your recipes and stuff that from these you've been collecting and making food out of?
Bernie, I couldn't really, maybe you can repeat that. I couldn't really hear you because the audio was cutting out.
Oh, is there any like written recipes for all these plants you've been collecting so that you
Yes.
can access the written recipes for the
So my dad has a whole database of recipes that he's accumulated in like 40 years on his computer. We have the cookbook, his Wild Vegan Cookbook, which was published in 2001, which has 500 of his best recipes. And in his app, Foraging with the Wildman, we have even more. And even in just like any of his other books, like his field guides, like there's this Foraging with New York, and that has like one recipe per plant. Yeah, this will have a couple of recipes per plant, not everything, but and my dad's website has a lot of stuff too.
Okay, thank you.
Curious. Yeah, of course. So yeah, this was really fun. I'm thank you for having me.
You have me on mute.
Kyle.
I think Sandy wants to just say a good night. Sandy, do you have me on mute?
Yeah, one last thing. If you get my books, please get them from my website, or Jeff Bezos gets to take another trip into space at my expense.
Thank you for telling us.
Thank you. And
Yeah, I'll sign up.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
wait, Sandy just wants to say something.
I'm so sorry. I've hit every button I can hit on this thing, and I don't know why my audio's not working. But anyway, I thought it was fantastic. Violet, you were as Eric said, very, your humor is fantastic. Your knowledge is unbelievable. I want to get out there, and I've actually tasted the garlic mustard. It's not my favorite flavor, but I want to taste the other one. And anyway, I think it's fantastic. And I know all those plants, most of them are highly invasive. They're good things to eat, like eat all you want. Even the deer don't eat the garlic mustard. We should did. Anyway, so thank you so much. Thanks to everybody participating. And I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody can't wait to get out there and try things.
Yes.
But make sure you know what you're trying. And this is one lady who's going to have already have a successful life career, whatever she does. So you're in your dorm room there at college?
Yeah. What was that?
Are you in your dorm room?
Oh, I'm at home. I'm on spring break.
Oh, spring. All right. Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Sandy. That means a lot, and I'm more than happy to be here and do this. And I remember me and my dad did like an in-person lecture for the Audubon, like for the Bronx River-Sound Shore, like when I was like 10 or 11 or something, and that was fun.
Right.
But this is amazing, and I'm so happy to be here, and that means a lot. So.
Right. And I know that I was on the walk where you were like 10 doing the bird walk with us. I think you were doing the bird walk with us when you were very little. And I knew then you were going to go great places.
Thank you. Yeah, I went. Yeah, I remember I helped band the Bluebirds a few times and stuff. So.
Right. Well, coming around again. We'll be doing it soon. I hope.
Yeah. For the Nature ID apps, I know there's some that actually, my dad's app, of course, Foraging with the Wildman, has pictures of the plants at all different times of year, goes into depth on the recipes, how to use them, the nutrition, the health benefits, everything. But I mean, I know there's Picture This and iNaturalist, which we've used to identify plants, although it is possible that they get those wrong. So you should always, if you're using an app like that, you should always just back check it with one of like a field guide you have and like multiple sources, just to make sure that you're always picking the right thing, because there are lookalikes and it can be easy to confuse things. So
that's a very good point. That's a very good point because I use all of those apps all the time, and particularly as a birder, you use Merlin, but those apps get things wrong. They'll tell me I have a California quail in my yard. I know I don't have a California quail in my yard, so you got to just be smart enough to know when they're right and when they're wrong.
Yeah, Merlin was my first thought. It gets it right most of the time, but it'll also tell you wrong things. So, yeah.
Okay, and thank you, Aaron, for taking over here for me.
Of course.
Thank you, Aaron.
Super terrific lady on our board there. And
As
I'm
are
gonna-
you, Sandy.
yeah. And we do have another program coming up in April. I don't have the thing with me right now. I think it's anyway.
Yes, our next program is April 12th at 7 p.m. via Zoom again. It's about migrant and vagrant traps of North America. Paul Lehman will be leading us on that program. So put it on your calendars.
Okay, on mine.
Thank you,
Okay,
Violet. And Doug, thank you for the nice snowy owl behind your head.
Yes.
Orlando took that one
Oh, great.
at Jones Beach.
Thank you again, Violet. It was wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
So happy you liked it. I'm so happy.
Thank you. It was great.
All right.
are we gonna log off here?
Okay, good night. Thank you.
Okay, good night. Bye.
Bye.